Chapter 15. Kiss You Inside Out. It's Sunday morning, only 2 days since River and I reconnected. 2 days, but it seems so much longer. After all, it only took a minute for me to crush on him that night 5 years ago. It took less than an hour for me to lust after him 2 days ago. And dare I say it, it only took me slightly more than a day to know I could feel something more for him. With our connection so strong, it seems strange that Ben keeps popping into my mind. Is it because I'm feeling guilty about not being able to recall ever having this kind of budding feeling for Ben, like I'm having for River? Ben and I never experienced the typical milestones of a new couple. Our relationship simply happened. We just loved each other. I don't recall when I knew for sure I loved him, or when I knew for sure he was the one I wanted to spend my life with. One day we were best friends, and then one day we were lovers. There was no single moment where I knew I loved Ben. I just always did. So yesterday, why did I feel something happening within me that was strange and different? It felt like some alien feeling somehow crashed through the universe and knocked on my door. What were these unknown feelings I had deep within me? Suddenly, after spending 2 days with River, I'm full of contentment. I remember waking up next to Ben for the 4 years we lived together, and countless more before that, but I don't recall ever feeling like I do now. We never cuddled with each other when we slept. Ben had his side of the bed, and I had mine. We would usually make love and fall asleep with our legs entwined or arms touching, but by morning we each clearly had our own side of the bed. Yet right now, River is sleeping soundly, his body wrapped around mine. I'm nestled into his hard sculpted chest. He's sleeping on the opposite side of the bed than he did Friday night. Funny, maybe he doesn't have a side, or maybe I don't. We had such a magical night. And yes, my backside is a little scratched from the bricks, but what a pleasant reminder of the amazing time we had. After leaving the club around midnight, we decided to walk back to the hotel and enjoy the sights. We walked arm in arm, slowly. We stopped to kiss, and we stopped to talk. We were in no hurry. Having both been sated by our passionate impromptu romp out on the terrace, we just wanted to enjoy each other's company. River stopped as we walked past the fountain at the Bellagio. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out 2 quarters and handed one to me. He explained that he wanted us both to throw the coins over our shoulders into the fountain while making a wish. He looked adorable as he said, 1, 2, 3, using his fingers like he was cueing up his band, and then yelled, "Go!" and we both tossed our coins. When I looked back at him, all signs of his playfulness had diminished. Adopting a more serious look, he whispered, "Do you want to know what I wished for?" "If you tell, doesn't that negate your wish?" Grinning his so-sexy half-smile, he shook his head and kissed me. "I wished for you." Moving closer to see the dancing water perform its show, we stood and watched it, hand in hand. "Come with me to L.A. tomorrow." It wasn't a question. It was a plea. I just moved, so I live alone, and I have some downtime while I wait on contract negotiations for the new album. With the brilliant white lights twinkling in the flowing water and the spray misting our faces, I felt like we were living in our own private, enchanted world. As he stared at me, I knew he was completely serious, that he really wanted me to go with him. It was a moment of pure vulnerability. My throat tightened from his words, and I fought back the tears of joy that stung my eyes. Of course I wanted to go with him, but I didn't know if I should. I didn't really know him. Did I? The night had been perfect. Our whole time together had been. I had a life back home with a job and friends, but it paled in comparison to what I experienced over the last 2 days. And I knew right then that I couldn't deny this man. I remembered the first time I saw him, that night in the bar so long ago, and I remembered feeling the exact same way I felt right now, like he could see into my soul. So I decided to be happy, to live in the moment. "What time are we leaving tomorrow?" Even before I could finish my words, he crooked his head in the most adorable way and flashed his dimples. He picked me up as he twirled me around and around. Then before I knew what was happening, he jumped over the fountain wall, holding me in his arms. There we stood in the streaming cold water, fully clothed, lights twinkling beneath us, mirroring the stars in the sky above. I looked at him, shook my head, and continued to smile the same smile I'd been wearing for the past 2 days. Wiping drops of water off my face, he had gazed into my eyes and winked at me. See, wishes really do come true, even if you share them. Lying here now, smiling at the memory of the fountain, I look at our clothes strewn all over the hotel room. As the light outside becomes brighter, I wish we had closed the blinds so I could stay asleep, dreaming of him. I start thinking about how I really should text Ari, so I carefully reach over to the nightstand for my phone. Damn, it's dead. Ari's probably so pissed. I forgot my phone yesterday, so I never called her. I'll have to borrow River's phone. Since I know I won't be able to fall back asleep unless I get up and close the blinds to darken the room, I decide it's time to wake my dirty dancer. Sliding my finger down his chest as it rises and falls with his shallow breathing, I trace every defined crease of his abs. Waking, he makes a pleasant noise in the back of his throat as he leans down and kisses the tip of my nose. I glance up, and when our eyes meet, he mutters, "Good morning," while grinning his crooked grin at me. With my fingertips heading back up toward his chest, I whisper, "You were sleeping so soundly. Were you dreaming of rainbows and butterflies?" Chuckling, he quickly untangles our bodies from the sheet and rolls me over onto my back. With him hovering over me, I stare into his eyes, now shining with need as he pins my arms to each side of my head, and says, "I'll give you butterflies." Then he whispers, "Can you wait a bit for your coffee?" before doing just what he said he would do. I can hear River singing Beautiful Day in the shower when I hang up the phone with Ari. Having already showered, I'm working on the interview as I listen to him and smile ear to ear. Happily, I hit the send button and finally submit the interview to Sound Music, and I think how my dad would have really gotten along well with River. Actually, I think my dad would have liked him a lot. They share the same taste in music and bands, and of course the same can be said about me and River. The only disagreement my dad and I ever had about music was concerning top 40 songs. My dad disliked top 40 music, as did Ben, but I love it. Ben disliked it because he didn't ever vary his choice of music. He listened to the same things since high school. My dad always pushed for the underdogs and supported indie bands. I'm not sure how River feels about top 40, but from the songs I've seen on his playlists, I'd say he's not a fan. Grabbing my briefcase, I pull a Sharpie marker out of it and pick my ribbed white cotton panties up off the floor. Under the bow on the front of the panties, I write, "You can push me up against a wall and do dirty things to me anytime." Before laying the note at the foot of the bed, I pull out my girly pink lip gloss, apply it heavily to my lips, and kiss the bottom of the note. Grabbing my now-charged phone, I finish the note by adding my cell number and head out the door in my running clothes. In the nearest boutique, I quickly purchase an outfit on the mannequin, shoes and an extra pair of jeans and a plain white t-shirt. In addition, I've also selected some revealing undergarments, including a pair of slinky black lace boy shorts, a slinky black lace push-up bra, garter belts, and thigh-high hose. I change in the dressing room. My cell begins to ring as I reach for an elastic hairband in my purse. It is flashing block collar, so I decide against answering and throw my hair into a messy bun. Applying a flick of powder and a touch of blush, I stop to look at myself. Wow, what a difference a few days can make. I no longer wince at the reflection because what I see looking back at me is sexy. Sure, I'm still soft and bony with no breasts to speak of, but none of that seems to matter to the wonderful man waiting for me upstairs. Happy with my purchase of a short, flared black skirt, a gray off-the-shoulder sweater, and low-heeled black-studded ankle boots, I set off to get us some coffee and breakfast, feeling better about myself today than I have in a very long time. When I return, I have to set the coffees and scones down next to the door in order to search for the room key I found in River's jeans pocket before I left. As I open the door, I can hear guitar chords. My mouth drops open and I almost dump the plastic-lidded cups down the front of my new outfit. There he sits in faded, worn blue jeans, shirtless, his guitar on his lap. The hot Nevada sun streams through the open glass doors, highlighting the magnificently lean muscles of his chest. He's the epitome of sexiness. He glances up at me and motions with his head for me to come sit next to him, but I stand there mesmerized by the view and the sound of the music. As I watch him play, my eyes dart to his nimble fingers picking the fretboard on the neck of the guitar. His fingers move with such ease, and the sound they make is mesmerizing. Continuing my visual journey, I eventually land my gaze on his taut biceps, and finally his beautiful face so engrossed in the music. His whole body seems to be moving to the beat in one single beautiful rhythm. Obviously staring at him, I'm unashamed. I can't help myself, but as soon as the words, "I want you to want me," leave his lush mouth, I close my eyes and absorb the music. Opening my eyes when he stops singing, I glance over at the couch. I see his Cheap Trick t-shirt lying on the back of it and smile. Now I know where he got the inspiration for the song he's singing, or at least I think I know. As he continues to sing the chorus while strumming his guitar, my body comes alive. I can feel my cheeks redden and my pulse quickens. Raising his head, he looks over my body. When his eyes reach my short skirt, he immediately stops playing. We stare at each other, and he cocks his head to the side as he sets his guitar down. His eyes are simmering. The look on his face tells me everything. He looks like he wants to devour me. His tongue slips slowly out of his mouth to lick his bottom lip, and when he pulls it back in, ever so slowly, I nearly faint from his raw sex appeal. I'm a few steps away when he combs his fingers through his disheveled hair, leaving strands sticking up. God, he is so incredible. Setting the coffees down, removing my purse, and placing the items on the coffee table, I walk over to him and straddle his lap. "Hey, sexy." He kisses the very corner of my mouth as he runs his hands from my boots to the bottom of my skirt. "Hi, yourself." Tangling my fingers through his wet hair, I tug on his bottom lip with my mouth. "I really like that song." My thighs tingle as his hands glide under my skirt. I know the moment he feels my new undergarments because his body stiffens, and he lets out a short gasp. "I really like your skirt." He explores the soft skin between my garter and my exposed thigh. "Did you buy this just for me?" He murmurs against my lips as he runs his fingers up and down the straps of my garters. Laughing, I say, "Maybe." He pauses mid-kiss to mutter, "Then missing you this morning was worth it." "Glad you approve." He gently bites my earlobe before whispering, "I loved your note." I smirk at him as his lips crash into mine, and he runs his palms up my back. When his fingers reach the knot in my hair, he pulls out my elastic tie. "I called you." My hands are wandering down his bare skin along his torso. "Oh, the black collar was you?" As he's running his fingers down the slight curve of my breasts and along each of my ribs, he says, "Let me see your phone." The last thing I want to do is break our closeness. It's behind me. "Can I see it?" Twisting around, I reach for my purse and pull out my phone, fully exposing the top of one of my thighs. "Fuck," I hear him mutter as I turn back and say, "Here you go, sir," with my Southern belle accent, the one I find myself using every time he demands something or does something extremely charming. Odd. Not sure why I'm doing that. Smirking at me, he takes my phone and taps on the screen before handing it back to me. "There you go. Now you'll know who I am when I call you," he says with a wink. "Do I get a picture?" I ask, standing up to snap one before he answers. Shaking his head at me with a ridiculously adorable grin on his face, he says, "My turn." He gets up to retrieve his phone from the kitchen counter. Holy shit. He has my lip-kissed underwear tucked in the back pocket of his jeans. Is he planning on keeping my panties as a souvenir? And that's not all I notice. His jeans are a tad loose, exposing just a hint of the gift that lies beneath them. Of course he turns to see me gawking, but I don't care, and I continue to stand there open-mouthed. He grabs his phone and walks back to the couch. "Yes," he says while pulling up my skirt and running his phone up my leg. I look at him quizzically, unable to comprehend anything right now until it clicks. "You are not taking a picture of my garter to store in your contact file," I tell him, pushing his hand away and lowering my skirt. "What makes you think that's what I was doing? But thanks for the suggestion." He laughs while feigning innocence. With a devilish look in his eyes, he raises an eyebrow and moves his phone to playfully finger the inside top of my hose. "And besides, I thought you bought these for me." Setting his phone down, he picks mine back up. He checks out the picture I took of him before tapping the screen a few more times. I watch him and remember that it wasn't too long ago that I thought happiness was only for those who believed in fairy tales, that my future held nothing but sadness and a stoic existence. Yet in this moment, as he juggles our phones, I think that maybe it's our time to be happy together. As River sets my phone back on the coffee table, he picks his up and turns to face me. "Smile, beautiful girl." And just like that, I melt at his heartfelt words, and for the first time in a long while, I feel hopeful. Chapter 16. Speechless. With the windows open, the sun is shining down on us, and the wind is blowing through my hair. The radio is on, but it's not even loud enough for me to identify the song that's playing. River is wearing his black leather jacket and Wayfarer sunglasses, and he looks incredibly hot. I shouldn't even be thinking about this after the conversation we just had, but I can't help myself. My mind is a jumble of thoughts that keep leading back to the man sitting next to me and how he makes me feel. His hands are gripping the perforated leather bands wrapped around the steering wheel. His lightly stubbled jaw is tightly clenched. Everything I see, everything about his body language indicates that he seems uncertain, unaware of how to proceed, maybe even unsure of what to say. We have been driving for more than 2 hours. River just exited onto the I-10W merge, and we're closing in on L.A. Even while driving, he oozes confidence. This sexy guy has completely turned my world around in a matter of days, and I'm hoping our recent conversation hasn't put a kink in our connection. Until about 20 minutes ago, we had been talking non-stop since leaving Las Vegas. I found myself telling him things I've never shared with another living soul, not even Ben. He was attentive to my every word and actually wanted to hear more. I told him about my parents, what their hopes were for my future, about the dreams I once had for my own future, the ones that would have had my parents smiling down on me from heaven. I told him about my life when I was younger, when I had parents I loved and who loved me. I even shared with him how my parents died, which I rarely ever speak of. Something about him just makes me want to open up to him. He talked about his family. He has a brother named Xander, 18 months older, and a sister named Belle, 15 months younger. His father died when he was 16, but his mother is very much a part of his life. She has since remarried. His mother's sister lives in Paris, and he has a cousin that he's never met. His maternal grandparents died before he was born, and his paternal grandparents died a couple of years ago. He talked openly about his grandparents' deaths, but he never mentioned how his father died, and I didn't ask. He was elusive about it, and I felt I shouldn't pry. He told me about how he started his band back in high school with his 2 buddies, how their band's name was chosen on a drunken bet, and why they kept their band to only 3 members. He told me about his career goals, which ones he has achieved, and which ones he's still working on. He told me about some of the disappointments life has thrown his way, and shared how hard it can be for happiness and fame to exist together. He also expressed his wish to remain an unknown musician, and how his brother, the band manager, disagreed and kept pushing the band further into the limelight. However, now we sit in silence ever since River asked me, "Can I ask you something?" My immediate response was, "Sure, anything." I wonder if I should have been a little more cautious before answering, but I wasn't expecting his question or the emotions that surfaced when I answered. Thinking about it, now it makes sense since thoughts of Ben never seemed to be far from my mind for long. Over the last few months, I had become very good at pushing the memories of Ben's murder out of my mind. I had perfected not reliving his death in my nightmares. However, the closer we got to LA, and the closer I got to the place Ben died, the more persistent those memories became. Not just memories, but feelings overtook me as well. Grief over his death resurfaced, as did guilt over returning with someone to the place where he died. So when River asked, "How did he die?" he triggered a flood of every horrid memory and ill feeling bubbling beneath the surface, just waiting to break through. Once I opened the dam, there was no closing it. I couldn't. I had to let it open. I told River about the whole tragic night as I remembered it, with tears streaming down my face, my body shaking with fear, my voice trembling with emotion. I retold the story of my fiancé's brutal attack. This time I was not a witness. I was simply me, the girl who loved a boy who was killed in front of her own eyes. He listened, nodded his head, held my hand, wiped tears from my cheek, and told me how sorry he was. Ending my emotional and detailed explanation of Ben's attack and his death, I managed to say, "And then I was escorted to a police car as the coroner drove away." With that, I drew in a deep breath and sighed. I wasn't going to tell him about my emotional state after Ben's death now. I mentally pushed everything back far away and simply asked, "Can I tell you the rest another day?" He nodded, seemingly unable to speak, maybe trying to process what I had just told him. So now, as River turns off the I-10 West onto the San Bernardino freeway, I decide to break the silence and lighten the mood. Plugging my iPhone into the modern radio jack he had installed in his 1960s car, I take a deep breath and run my hands through my wind-blown hair before asking, "Want to play a game?" He gives me a quizzical look before pulling off the freeway. "Can we talk first?" I nod my head, but don't say anything. I don't want to think any more about Ben today, but he isn't going to let me get away with that. River parks the car at a gas station and takes off his sunglasses. Setting them on the dash, he silently unbuckles his seatbelt, twists his body to face me, and reaches over to unbuckle mine. Placing his hands on my shoulders, he turns me to face him. He removes my sunglasses, and with the pads of his thumbs he caresses my cheeks. He looks at me intently before speaking, and I swallow back the emotion I'm feeling from the intensity of his stare. A stare so full of concern, I feel like my tears may return at any moment. What happened to him was wrong, but for it to happen in front of you, that is something you should never have had to see or experience. Placing his fingers under my chin, he tilts my head up. His eyes are gleaming and so full of strength, but his voice is soft, almost broken as he continues. "I mean it. What you went through would break anyone, but here you are, so vibrant, so full of life, and still in one piece. Whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here, ready to listen." He pauses a second to rub his thumbs across my cheeks again, then down my neck. He looks at me with a serene expression and says, "You're so absolutely beautiful." He stops speaking and places a soft kiss on my lips. As he watches me with such care and concern, I quietly respond, "River, my life the last 2 years has been nothing, really." I stop to cup his gorgeous face in my hand and then continue. "I'll tell you about it, about me during that time, just not now. You have to understand, it was such a sad time for me, and I don't want to relive it right now. But I want you to know this. Being with you these last few days has been the most fun I've experienced in a long time." I stop speaking and kiss him, but my kiss is not gentle like his. It's intense and passionate. He makes me want him every time he touches me, and his touch pushes away any sorrowful thoughts lingering in my mind. He immediately wraps his arms around me, holding me tight. I think again about how we're two people who just connected, or actually reconnected, and it feels like we've known each other for far longer than 3 days. As we sit here together, we're in no hurry. We have nowhere to be but with each other, and it feels heavenly. Before breaking our embrace, he whispers, "Did I tell you how beautiful you look today?" Goosebumps ravage my body, and he's grinning as he draws his finger down my bare shoulder. He knows that drives me wild. He's doing it on purpose, and I can't help but smile at the thought. His words are so raw and honest. I know he can only be speaking the truth. My heart is beating faster. I'm smiling so widely, not only on the outside, but on the inside as well. It's in this moment that I realize the sweet nothings he whispers are a part of his gorgeous soul, the soul I already feel so connected to in this very short amount of time we've spent together. I know that coming to LA with him was definitely the right choice. Grinning back at me, he pulls my seatbelt across my body. I see him smile when he runs his fingertips across my hip bone before buckling it, and then tracing down my leg, slinking his fingers under my skirt, before twisting and leaning back in his seat. Fastening his own seatbelt, he glances at me. "You mentioned playing a game. What do you have in mind?" Turning the volume up on the radio, I tap the library button on my iPhone and select one of my favorite songs. I allow the song to play for 5 seconds before hitting the pause button. "Name it." He looks over at me with a shit-eating grin on his face. "Really? Come on now. All you had to give me was the first 3 beats of that rollin' drum machine, and I'd know the haunting beat of Phil Collins any day of the week." Starting to thump out the intro on the steering wheel, he adds rhythm to his beat. Using the dash as his pedal bass and his voice to synthesize the droning, he begins to sing the first few lyrics of "In the Air Tonight." Thinking, wow, he's good, I shake my head and tease, "Show off." "Come on, what else you got, baby?" Studying my library for songs he may not recognize in 3 seconds or less, I decide to try Poison's Talk Dirty to Me. Before I even hit the pause button, he yells out, "Look what the..." Then he stops and grins, not bothering to finish the lyrics. Reaching over and running his fingers down my leg, he nonchalantly mentions that Talk Dirty to Me was named one of the 40 greatest hard rock songs of all time. And as his touch sends shivers down my spine, he says, "But you must know that, so why are you being easy on me?" Pulling his hand back, he reaches for his sunglasses and puts them back on. "Next." After 9 songs, I say, "Okay, musical genius, last one, all or nothing." Then flickering my eyes at him, I hike my skirt up just enough for him to catch a glimpse of what lies beneath and ask, "You in?" He's managed to guess every single song within 3 seconds, so why not distract him a little? Knock him off his game. I hear a sharp intake of breath. "I'm always in," he mutters with a smirk on his face. Knowing there is not a single song on my playlist he won't know, I decide to just have some fun. Turning up the volume, I let Adelita's Way blare through the car, knowing full well there is no intro or musical chorus. Dirty Little Thing starts to play, and I let the first 2 lines play before looking at his grinning face. On the 3rd line of the lyrics, I don't turn the music off, but instead start singing along. I run my hand up the inside of his thigh as I continue singing about how I like it when he looks at me, and before I finish the first chorus, he joins in, and we both sing about not being able to say no. By the 3rd chorus, the song is still thumping, but we aren't playing Name That Tune anymore. Reaching over, I take his sunglasses off so I can see his eyes. He immediately places his hand back on my leg. This time his fingers dart quickly to the bare spot between my hose and my garter belt. My body starts to ache with need. His touch does this to me every time. Placing my hand on top of his, I give it a little squeeze, and in a voice somewhere between playful and seductive, I say, "You won, you know." With a full-blown blinding smile that makes my heart skip a beat and my lips tingle, he cocks his head and glances over at me. "I know." He laughs. As he picks up my hand and brings it to his mouth, he kisses each of my knuckles and asks, "What do I win?" Smiling, I remove my hand from his mouth, place it back on his thigh, and lean over the center console to suck on the sweet spot behind his ear before answering, "Anything you want." I stay close to him, inhaling his fresh scent, rubbing my nose along his unshaven jaw. Funny, I never liked it when Ben didn't shave, but I love the feel of River's slight stubble against my soft skin. As I lean back, his lips form a slow, sexy smile. "Anything?" "Anything," I promise. Laughing huskily, he glances down at my hand on his lap and raises his eyebrows. I raise one eyebrow in return. "Really?" I ask, but not really questioning it. "You wouldn't," he says, looking down at my hand again as I begin to slide my palm up his leg to the button on his jeans, slipping my fingertips inside his waistband. His breathing picks up and he groans when he feels my touch. "Dahlia, I'm only kidding." I glance at him from under my lashes. Leaning forward, I whisper in his ear, "You might want to pull off the road as soon as you can." His gaze falls to his lap again as I successfully unbutton his jeans and begin pulling down his zipper. "Dahlia, I wasn't really serious." "River, you don't know me well enough yet. I never back away from a challenge, or from paying up." "We'll be home in less than 30 minutes, he manages to say. By this point, I am kissing his neck, his jawline, and the outer edge of his ear. "Your choice." Almost unable to speak, he mutters, "My choice what?" "You won. You told me what you want. I'm not backing down, so pull over." Noticing his tight grip on the wheel and the look in his eyes, I know he wants this, but doesn't want to admit it. "Dahlia?" he asks. I unzip his pants and tug at the opening of his boxers, freeing his erection before I tease, "Pull over. You can choose. On the road or off the road. That much you get to decide. But I won't wait." I am physically and verbally making him unmistakably aware that this is going to take place sooner, not later. I am not waiting until we get to his house. "Fuh," he starts to say as he quickly moves from the innermost left lane to the outermost right lane, exiting the highway as soon as he can. Before beginning my descent, I glance up at him. His back is pushed against the seat, his eyes are slightly hooded, and his eyes are overflowing with desire. Surprising myself again with what I am about to do, what I have never enjoyed doing before, I can only give him a wicked grin. However, I opt to wait for him to safely park the car before finding my way down to his lap, deciding that his state of mind right now might hinder his driving. I don't waver my seduction in the slightest, though. I reach back and unbuckle my seatbelt as River pulls into an underground garage of an office building, obviously closed on Sundays. As he pulls into a parking space in the center of the lot, he unbuckles his seatbelt, pushes his seat back. "Shit, what are you doing to me?" he pants. Before letting him kiss me, I taunt, "Nothing yet." I know he's not really referring to what I am doing to him at this moment. I know this because I often want to ask the same thing of him. He has undone me so completely, so quickly, and I think he feels the same way about me. Capturing my mouth, he kisses me until I am breathless, but I am not wavering. Moving away, I start to trail open-mouthed kisses down his neck, over the outside of his t-shirt, down his abs, finally reaching my destination. His legs tremble slightly as my tongue darts to his very tip, circling it before running it down one side to his base and back up. His hands are lightly gripping my head, and I can hear his erratic breathing. I clench his base with one hand, and he groans as I slide my mouth over his length, moving slowly, up and down. Letting go of my head, he grabs my other hand and starts to suck hard on my thumb. Passion is bubbling over inside me as I take him in my mouth as far as I can. When his tip hits the very back of my throat, I keep it there, moving just slightly back and forth, but this time with my teeth, not my lips. My tongue continues to lick circles, and when it rounds his base, I feel him shudder. His body's reaction, his groans, his heavy breathing, they're all stoking the fire already blazing in my body. I want to make him feel good, the same way he has made me feel the past few days, so I suck harder and faster. He releases my hand, and I wrap both of my hands around his base. His hands move to grip my hair as he begins to move my head to the rhythm of his body. I follow, taking him all the way in and pulling him out as I bare my teeth gently against his long, hard length. His body stiffens at first before relaxing, and I am sure he's going to lose control. Groaning loudly, he takes his right hand and slides it back and forth across my back, muttering my name. He exposes the skin between my sweater and skirt and runs his fingernails across it while his left hand continues to tangle in my hair, still guiding me. His breath quickens as I rock my head up and down. His right hand slips under the waistband of my skirt, and his fingers splay and grab my ass, causing an ache to build between my legs. I can feel myself getting wetter. Hearing him suck in a few quick breaths through his teeth, I know he's close to coming. When I flick my tongue across his tip, circling it, sucking it, he hisses, "Fuck." He lets go of my head and grabs the door, his other hand still rubbing back and forth across the soft skin of my backside. He's nearly panting when I hear him mutter, "Yes." Then, as his body stills, his stomach muscles clench. I can taste the salty sweetness flowing down the back of my throat as I swallow. Raising my head, I can't help but grin at him. His eyes are still closed, but his face is content. As he opens his eyes, his breathing slowly returns to normal. I lick my lips, still able to taste him, and his eyes widen. He starts to say something, but I don't let him speak as I crush my mouth to his. When he has thoroughly kissed me, he pulls away and then presses his forehead to mine. His warm breath brushes my cheeks. I have to say, I really enjoy playing that game with you, more than any other game I remember playing with anyone, ever. Pulling back, he kisses me on the nose and chuckles. I'm going to have to come up with a really great grand prize for you when you actually win one of these days. I lean my head back against the headrest as I raise an eyebrow. Maybe I've just been letting you win. I have mad game-playing skills you haven't even seen yet. I can't wait for you to unleash your mad skills. He stretches his legs out to zip his pants back up, shakes his head, and brushes a finger over my lips. I give him a quick wink before I buckle my seatbelt. In due time. Now let's go check out this new house of yours. Chapter 17. Home. As we pull up to a very affluent neighborhood in the Hollywood Hills, I'm a little surprised by how intimidating it is. There's a large iron gate at the entrance to the community, monitored by multiple guards. I don't see any lane designated for the residents to just pull through using either gate openers or barcodes on their windows. When we stop in front of the glass booth, a young, skinny, blonde-haired woman in a uniform approaches the car. River nods his head and greets her. He flashes his sexy dimples and pearly whites. We are immediately waved through. Obviously, this guard already knows who he is. Scrutinizing the area, I notice a bunch of young women all dressed the same. They are camped outside the gate. I hadn't noticed them when we drove in, but I do now because they're yelling and holding up signs. One sign reads, "Autograph for a kiss?" Another one reads, "I trade fair." Interesting. I point them out as they shake their signs along with other body parts and ask, "Are they your groupies or just groupies in general?" He glances over and says, "In general, I assume. I'm really not sure. I've never paid attention. But they're basically the reason I moved into a gated place." "Oh, right. You don't like fans." "I didn't say that. In the right place at the right time, I do. Sometimes they forget artists have personal lives, too." He stops as if contemplating what to say next. Don't get me wrong. I love the whole signing autographs thing and meeting new people after we perform. It's the chaos I don't really like. The screaming begins to fade as he looks in the rearview mirror. Xander says it comes with the job and they're harmless. Shaking his head, he continues, I'm sure they are, but they can be aggressive. For some reason, I hadn't pictured River living in one of the most famous Hollywood Hills neighborhoods. But as we drive through the quiet, paved streets, I understand. It not only provides privacy and security, but it's also secluded and peaceful, just like the hotel he stayed at in Las Vegas. Like me, he must prefer a more tranquil life. Funny, Ben loved the beach, but not the quiet of it like I did. As River drives deeper into the community, I think about how Ben would have referred to these houses as homes of the irresponsibly rich and ass-famous. Ever since he investigated Mark Hines, the famous football player who lived somewhere up in the hills, he was irrationally biased toward any famous person from this part of L.A. Ben was the journalist on the team that investigated the money laundering scheme based on illegal betting. Mark was such a douche, as Ben put it, that he never confessed. He blamed his agent instead. Because of this, he was allowed to continue to play football. Ben felt Mark used his money and fame to hide his part in the scheme. He also felt it was because of his celebrity status that it worked. His attitude may have stemmed from a mix of his love for football, the injustice itself, and maybe a little jealousy over the power Mark held. I was never certain. So whenever I mentioned that any well-known person lived in the hills, his comment was always a derivative of that fucktard this or that fucktard that. He was never jealous of how much money another person had, since both of our families were financially secure. But I do think he was jealous of Star's celebrity status. Even though Ben never actually told me so, I know he had hoped to be a household name one day, like Anderson Cooper. Ben and I didn't live extravagantly. We grew up on the beach where there was never any pressure to keep up with the Joneses. We lived our lives easy and carefree for the most part. It was the way of life around there. As I looked around, I have to remember that is not my life anymore. But I should keep an open mind about the city where River grew up, the place where he's most known as a musician. I have no doubt he will be more widely famous soon. I hadn't thought of him like that until now, but being here drives it all home, and Ben's words reverberate through my mind. Noticing that I seem distracted, River asks, "What, you don't like it?" His voice snaps me out of my thoughts, and I can't help but laugh. "Of course I do, silly. You just didn't tell me you were one of the rich and famous." He laughs. "I told you. I got a great deal on this house." Before he continues, he reaches out to hold my hand. The previous owners got divorced and just wanted to get rid of it. Xander is friends with the ex-husband, and he hooked me up. He kisses my hand and holds it on his lap. "The view from my backyard is amazing, and that's what sold me on the house the minute I saw it." Smiling at him, I can't help but think about how much we really did have in common. Funny, the first thing I do whenever I go anywhere is check out the view. In fact, I think I checked out your view the first time I saw you. Laughing at me, he says, "Oh, you're finally going to admit you were staring at me." "No, I didn't say that. Don't get carried away." I pinch his leg in admonishment. All the houses are isolated on their own large plots, but I can't see most of the front doors as we drive by because the houses are so well hidden. I'm not really even that interested because the view inside the car is way more appealing. "You don't even want to start that kind of game," River says, lifting up my hand and gesturing to where I just pinched him. Then he releases my hand and reaches over to tickle me. I shift in my seat and start squealing. I'm very ticklish, but don't want him to know this, so I try to quickly subdue myself. But he's relentless and continues his assault. "You're driving! Put both hands on the wheel, please!" I yell out as tears of laughter stream down my face. At a stop sign, he takes his hand back to grab the wheel and hits the turn signal with his other hand. He tilts his head to look at me, and a devilish grin appears on his face. "You didn't seem that worried about my driving ability an hour ago." "Actually, I was. That's why I waited for you to park the car first," I respond with a sly grin. "Well, I'll stop for now, but only because you asked so nicely," he says sweetly. He starts to slow down as he approaches a cul-de-sac. He nods toward a house I can just barely see at the end of the street. "Here we are. "Home sweet home," he says as he pulls into a long, upward-sloping driveway. The house has a smooth white stucco finish and looks to be a 1940s-style ranch. It's suspended high above the city with a large, modern, circular stucco staircase leading to a beautiful pair of Art Deco-style double doors. The landscaping is modest but neatly kept. Eclectic rocks surround the palm trees. River hits a button in his car, and the large wooden door opens. The garage is located under the house. As he pulls in, I can see a wide staircase in the back right corner that must lead into the house. Once he puts the car in park, he switches the ignition off and shifts to face me. "Remember, I already warned you what to expect. I just moved in." He seems slightly nervous, so I want to reassure him. It can't be much worse than my house, and I've been in transition for way longer. As he opens his door, he turns back to look at me. He's wearing a huge smile, and his eyes sparkle. "Not sure if I mentioned this, but since I lived with a bunch of dudes, I didn't bring much. The previous owners left a few things, but really it'll be like camping until we hit some stores." Rolling my eyes at him as I reach for the door handle, I ask, "Are you trying to tell me we'll be sleeping on the floor?" "Pretty much." "Well then, Mr. Rockstar turned Boy Scout, show me the way." I can't help but laugh, thinking about how similar our carefree domestic attitudes are. He points at me and says, "Don't laugh. I told you I just moved in." At the front of the car he takes my hand, leading me up the stairs. Once we reach another small bank of steps that lead to the landing, he ushers me forward. When we get to the top, he reaches above the door and removes a key from the ledge. Turning around, I notice the key in his hand and make a joke about never letting anyone see where you keep your spare key. As I look at him, my breath catches and my pulse starts to race. Unashamed, I continue to watch him as he reaches around me to unlock the door. I notice his eyes drift down to my skirt. His fingertips lightly brush the hem before his hands brace the doorframe on both sides of me. The sunlight is peeking through a small round window behind him, highlighting his handsome features. He dips his head so we're eye level. "Since we've already established you're not a stalker, you knowing where I hide the key just makes it easier." Leaning in, he places his knee in between mine and kisses me hungrily. He kisses up and down my jawline and neck, almost as if trying to find my pulse. It should be easy, since it's racing. This kiss isn't just any kiss. It's a kiss very much full of need, not just his, but mine. It's a kiss that leaves me breathless and wanting more. I wonder how it is that 1 minute we can be having a normal conversation, and the next minute I want to strip down in his garage and fuck him right here. It's completely new to me. My inability to control my libido around him is making me a little nervous, so I lower my head and duck under his arm, reaching for the doorknob. Without glancing back, I open the door and pass him by. But he moves faster than I do and covers my eyes with his hands, then guides me to where he wants me to stand. "Okay, you're cool to look now." Opening my eyes, I realize I definitely need a house tour. I'm standing in what must be the most mod-looking kitchen I have ever seen. There's a 12-light, ultra-modern fixture hanging from the ceiling. It's at least 8 feet long. Stainless steel appliances flank the entire kitchen, and where you would normally find cupboards, there are thick glass shelves. The floor is a mix of black and white swirled together. Very chic. The counters are jet black granite with white pearl splashed throughout. There is a high bar with curvy black stools along it, and on the other side is the living room. It is unlike any kitchen I have ever seen. "River, this is stunning," I say as I take it all in before moving toward the living room. He follows, and I can feel his eyes on me. "Yeah, stunning." The living room is painted white, and rich black walnut wood panels the wall in front of me. A large black and white picture of River and his band hangs on one of the walls. Underneath the picture is a long gray tufted sofa, next to a few vintage guitars resting in their stands. To the left is a huge flat-screen TV sitting on a small stand. Surprisingly, no video game system is attached. Walking over to the couch, he sits down. "Xander outdid himself," he says, patting the couch. "He picked this out for me and had it delivered." He glances up at the picture and points to the TV and guitars. He said these are housewarming presents. "That's really nice of him. I comment while walking over to get a closer look at the picture. While stretching his arms out on the back of the couch, River says, "He can be, sometimes. You can be the judge when you meet him." Well, if he's anything like you, I'm sure I'll like him. I almost said love, but quickly caught myself. My emotions are running away from me. I have to rein them in. "When was this taken?" I ask, still looking at the large photograph on the wall. "A while ago, maybe 4 years. It was our first officially released band photo," he says, laughing quietly. "It was a big deal for Xander, the first task he accomplished as band manager." "Having your brother looking out for you must relieve a lot of stress. I don't have any siblings, but always wanted a brother and a sister." "I love my brother and my sister, but they can both be a pain in the ass." "Well, I would have loved to have had even one pain in the ass growing up with me," I teasingly say. "Yeah, I guess you're right." He tries to reach for me, but I'm already at the large glass doors that seem to go on for miles. The view is out of this world. In the distance I can see each letter of the Hollywood sign. It's truly amazing, and immediately I long to snap a picture. I wish I brought my camera up from the car. Opening one of the doors, I step outside to an equally amazing outdoor living area that spans the entire length of the house. The upper deck has a large wooden table and chairs set, along with a built-in grill. To the right and left are modern spiral staircases. Each circles down to the lower deck, where there is a large rectangular pool and hot tub. Several cloth-covered benches line the half wall made of plexiglass. I turn to River, who hasn't spoken while watching me intently. "This is your view?" I sputter out. "You can see the HOLLYWOOD sign," I whisper, spelling out the word. In the time we've spent together, River certainly hasn't given me any indication that he's as wealthy as his surroundings suggest. Sure, he stayed in a nice hotel and spent plenty of money over the weekend, but he's just so laid back and down to earth. After seeing this house with this view, I start to wonder what I've gotten myself into. Snapping me out of my reverie, he comes up from behind and wraps his arms around me. "Hey, you okay?" "Yeah, I just had no idea." "No idea of what?" "That you're one of the rich and famous." Chuckling, he says, "Hardly. Just in the right place at the right time." River presses his body into mine and adds, "And I had no idea either." "No idea of what?" His body moves as he laughs, and I feel his strength behind me. "That you're one of those people that has to spell out Hollywood." I turn around and give him a soft shove. "You're an ass. I'm just surprised. It seems like something you would have mentioned, that's all," I say, motioning to the sign, the view, and his house. "You mean like, hey, I just moved into a really sweet new place, and by the way, you can see the Hollywood sign from my backyard?" He mocks, pulling me back in for a tight embrace. Well, I guess not. I don't have a chance to say anything more before he leans into my neck and kisses me so forcefully that I know I'm going to have a mark. My body shivers from his touch, from his warm breath, and I giggle. "What are you doing?" "I think you know." He laughs against my skin. I sigh and breathe deeply. "I've had enough show and tell for now, and I have one more room to show you," he says as he leads us back into the house. "Let's finish what we started in the car, in here," he continues as we cross the living room and walk down a hall to an open door at the end. "Your bedroom," I manage as I look into the very large, empty room. There are multiple closed doors inside it. One most likely opens into a bathroom, and the others are probably closets. The room also has the same large glass doors as the living room, and I can see the sign and the city from here too. Everything is just so beautiful. I laugh when I take a closer look at the room. In the middle is an air mattress with pillows and blankets thrown on it. Turning to face him, I smirk, and he smirks right back. He really does light up my insides, so much so I know my darkest days are behind me. "What are you smiling about?" I whisper while running my hands up his chest. "I don't know. What are you smiling about?" he responds while moving some of my hair aside. I can't believe you were telling me the truth. We really are camping. I never lie, he says, suddenly very serious. Grabbing his hand, I lead him to the center of the room and turn to face him. I never meant it that way, I whisper before sucking on his upper lip. He mumbles something I can't comprehend, but for some reason I don't ask him to repeat it. He lightly shakes his head and runs his finger over my lips. The sun is shining so brightly into this room, there is nowhere to hide. I cannot cover up what I once didn't want him to see. Never taking my eyes off his, I break our embrace and peel my shirt over my head before pulling down my skirt, letting it fall to the floor. Standing in the lingerie that I bought for his eyes only, I smile at him as I run my hands down my body and he gasps. His fingers trace the skin above my push-up bra and move down to my ribs before tracing circles on my almost non-existent stomach muscles. Do you have any idea what you do to me? He whispers as he leans to kiss the same trail he'd just etched with his finger. I stand there, unable to move, having the same thoughts. My heart is racing, and I really don't know what is happening to me. Every time he touches me, my desire for him becomes more of a need and less of a want. As he stands back up, his powerful green eyes scan my body, slowly. Grinning, he runs his hands down to my garter belt as he says, I've been wanting to see what these look like since this morning. Then, unsnapping first one, and then the other, he continues, It was certainly worth the wait. He leans back a little, catches my hand, and turns it over. Bringing it to his mouth, he gently kisses each fingertip, stopping to suck on them for just a moment before kissing my palm. I'm glad you like the outfit, I pant out. My eyelids are fluttering as he breathes on the sensitive spot of my wrist, and I continue, I bought it just for you. Groaning, he threads his fingers through my hair, then runs them down my back, unhooking my bra, but not removing it. I pull his shirt over his head, and he rips his jeans off before I push him down on the mattress. As I stare into his eyes, so full of desire, I straddle him and he grunts, I've wanted to do this since your little name that tune game. I hover over him, wearing nothing but my lingerie, and I let his eyes devour me. I can feel our connection growing even stronger, and today, in the early hours of the evening, on the absolute brightest and most beautiful day of the year, we slowly do what we haven't done before. We begin to make love. Chapter 18. Pinball Wizard. Despite having slept on an air mattress, I wake up feeling surprisingly rested and make my way to the bathroom. I look back over my shoulder and grin at the sight of River sleeping so peacefully. I notice again we don't seem to have sides of the bed. I quietly pad over to his closet and find a white button-down shirt on top of a bunch of boxes. While slipping it on, something grabs my attention. The top box has River's boxers in it, and Pac-Man catches my eye immediately. Pac-Man? Really? I love Pac-Man. When I was younger, my father used to take me to an old-fashioned arcade down the street from the Greek at least once a week. Still grinning, I slip on the Pac-Man boxers and make my way through the empty house to the kitchen in search of coffee. Walking down the hallway to the living room, I think about how we spent the remainder of yesterday's daylight hours in his room, getting to know each other better. I'm constantly surprised by how comfortable I feel with him. The fun we experience together is simply intoxicating. It keeps me wanting more, and I'm pretty sure it keeps River wanting more too. When the darkness fell upon us last night, the Hollywood sign glowed in the distance. After stepping outside to take it all in, we made our way back inside to the living room, where we ordered pizza. We ate and talked, then we laughed at Letterman. Finally, we made our way back to his bedroom and continued what we started earlier. Looking around the kitchen, I don't see a coffee pot anywhere, so whether or not he has coffee is irrelevant. He actually has nothing in his kitchen. No food, no small appliances, not even silverware. I stand in the doorway to the bedroom and look around at the blank canvas. It gives away nothing about who River is, but I don't mind, because I already feel like I know him so well. Yesterday, I may have been a little taken aback by his home, but I know that where River lives is not an indication of who he is. And besides, I love this house, especially the incredible view. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I dare not think it. Not yet, anyway. As I watch him sleep, I can't help but think about